Afer-Anderson. You know, I fervently believe that by whatever name you called him, or some people might say her, God Almighty is the ultimate creative force in all the universe. As his creations, we must ourselves be creative. I believe that all of us are artists, but some people are blessed to be aware that he or she is an artist. And I have the great fortune of speaking with someone now who has enjoyed that blessing for a good portion of his life, Mr. Richard Press.
Thank you.
How you doing, brother?
Doing great. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. And we share the same birthday?
Same birthday, same year.
Yeah, how about the same year?
Yeah.
You're not as old as I am.
1950.
You didn't have to say that.
Said it very low.
Yeah, okay. They picked it up, but that's cool. I'm proud of my age. Man, we have a lot in common.
Yeah, we sure do.
Yeah.
Same school.
Norfolk
State.
Yeah, I went to Norfolk State for a semester. They said, you got to go.
Right.
Yeah. But so let's talk about the art.
Yes.
When did you realize that you were an artist?
Well, I can tell you when I realized that I had an interest in art.
Okay, all right.
It was early on, probably about the 7th grade. My oldest brother, Pearlie, was an artist.
Okay.
And I had no interest in it until one day I saw him sitting down getting ready to draw or paint a picture. So I stopped, asked myself, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to paint this horse. So I looked at the horse, I looked at his palette, which is his colors.
Right.
I said, well, the horse is brown. He says, I know. I said, well, how are you going to make it brown? There's not brown in the colors. So you stand here and watch. So I did. Everybody else went out to play. I stood and watched him.
Right.
And lo and behold, he took a picture about this small, and he made a picture about this large of a brown horse. I could never figure out how he got brown out of those colors, out of the red, blue, and yellows. So that's kind of sparked my interest. But you know, sometimes it just takes a small seed to spark an interest for a lifetime. And I think that's what happened to me.
So you were interested then because of your curiosity?
Curiosity is what got me.
Okay.
And then, you know, from curiosity, you start experimenting. Because, you know, with curiosity never dies unless you find some way to find out what the end result of that curiosity. Sure. And so, you know, the major thing I wanted to do then was draw. Wasn't into painting, it was into drawing. Because I couldn't afford paints. Paints cost money.
How about it?
So the only way I could get paints was at school, and then we had to do what the teachers told us to do. You know?
Couldn't experiment and explore.
Exactly. There wasn't too much room for creativity.
Right.
Really?
And an art class that didn't allow a lot of creativity.
That's right. We took art classes in a basement. We had one teacher for the whole school, and they set out the rules for your art, and you followed those rules. You got graded on them. So if you wanted to be creative, you had to be creative at home or in your recess.
Right.
And that's what I found myself doing mostly.
Okay, so you're speaking of public school now.
Public school.
Okay, and then you're from the Eastern Shore.
From the Eastern Shore, Chariton.
Okay.
Some people might know where Cape Charles is, but Chariton is adjacent to Cape Charles.
Okay.
Very, very small town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was everybody's cousin. You know, that's why I had to go to Georgia to find a wife.
Right, yeah.
But ironically, there are a lot of artists that come from the Eastern Shore.
I'm not at all surprised.
Yes.
Because they're kind of close to...
They're close, and we lived on a peninsula. So when we say Eastern Shore, a lot of people relate that to Maryland. Because when you're driving the Eastern Shore, you just keep going. You never think about what towns am I passing.
Right.
You know? But you're passing a lot of towns that have a lot of history and a historic quality to them. And so before you know it, you're up in Salisbury. And you blinked an eye and you were past the peninsula. So a peninsula is whenever you have three sides of water.
Sure.
Right? So as soon as you get across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, boom, that's my hometown.
So how did that environment, was there anything in your environment, in addition to what happened with your brother Pearlie, was there anything in your environment that gave you creative ideas, things that you wanted to?
Quite a bit, because the Eastern Shore, where I'm from, is an agricultural area.
Right.
So we grew up working in the fields, you know. even before you entered high school, you were working. You were either picking tomatoes, digging potatoes,
Right.
cucumbers, the whole 9 yards. So just those scenes, because the women used to dress up in pants, and they would generally have 2 or 3 skirts over top of the pants.
Okay.
They would wear socks,
Right.
and sometimes 2 or 3 pair of socks, and they would wear these long wide hats to keep the sun off of them. Because when we picked tomatoes, there was no shade.
Okay.
You work in 90-degree temperatures. You get off in the evening. You have a half an hour lunch break. You go eat your tuna fish sandwich, and you on the bus, and then you go back, or either under the shade, and you go back to work.
So there were a lot of images that kind of inspired you, the ladies in the hat and the landscape and so forth. And I want to talk about the kind of art that you do and the mediums that you worked in. But after that curiosity, was there a moment that you realized that, yeah, I'm an artist, this is who I am?
Well, when I first realized it was when I got a scholarship.
Well, that'll help.
Yes, it helped. I got a scholarship. I went to Northampton County High School, and on the night of graduation, when they called the scholarships out, I was fortunate that my name was called out. My scholarship was for $10.
Oh, wow.
And one interested lady gave me that scholarship. After I left the Eastern Shore, I decided that I was going to go back and get that $10, but it cost me more money to go back to get it. But it was the principle of it. It was the idea that this lady, spent $10 to help boost my career in art. But when I first started doing art, I didn't really capture the images that I saw on the Eastern Shore. For some reason, they were kind of harmful. They kind of hurt you. Okay. Because my mother was doing the same thing. I remember the image of her and Nell coming down a dirt road, coming home, and with that long, wide hat on.
Right.
And we just looked at it and said, that's our mother who's out there working for us, on this particular day. So I didn't want to recreate that image.
I understand.
But after I studied a little bit about John Biggers, John
Yes,
Biggers was an artist that went to Hampton University.
Right.
He became one of my idols in art. He painted a lot about his life growing up. He never painted women's hands to be beautiful. He always painted the hands larger than life, and he always painted them soiled. And I used to wonder why he did that, and I had an opportunity to meet him. And he said that because women's hands weren't beautiful back then, black women's hands were not beautiful. They worked the fields, they washed the clothes, they cooked the food. When the men had to go off into the military, they took care of everything. They took care of the bills. Why should he paint their hands beautiful when that's not a correct statement? So
you began to appreciate that you were to use art to tell the truth.
To tell the truth,
okay.
And I think it's incumbent amongst artists, visual artists especially, to tell the story. In the old days, especially in the biblical days, artists back in those days would tell a story through their artwork.
Well, we're going to take a break now,
sure.
And we're going to take a look at some of your work,
okay?
And our viewers will get an opportunity to see it.
Great.
Okay, and you can tell us those stories.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking to artist Richard Press, and right now you're going to get an opportunity to see a sample of some of Richard's work. Okay, so we have several pieces here that we're going to take a look at, and the viewers are going to see them along with us. What is this first piece, and what is it called?
Well, this first one is called The African Wedding.
Okay.
It's a person from the Himbe tribe.
Okay, this is a real person.
This is a real person.
Okay.
And this is the garments that they wear during their wedding, somewhat of the garment that they wear. They normally dress in very little to nothing in this particular tribe, but when they have a ceremony or a wedding or such, then this is what would be considered, I guess, that would be compared to a tuxedo in our society.
Okay.
And these colors in here, these hues in here, you see a lot of brown, but as I said before, based on what my brother was doing, I don't use brown, I mix it. So the browns in here rich and heavy, that come out to a nice tone when you merge them out.
And a bunch of different tones of the brown. So you're creating the color that you
You
want
create
to,
the colors. It's a mixture of colors that you can use, and then you can make them darker by adding black to them, or you can
Right.
give a tint to them by making them a little bit more white.
Right. Now, see, I remember a little bit from that art class.
I see
back in Norfolk
that.
State.
I can understand that.
All right, let's take a look at the second one.
Okay. The next one is.
Man, that's so powerful.
This is a child, and the reason I have this is because of the expression. The eyes sort of captivating, and they sort of go right into the soul of the viewer. But the major thing here is the ceremonial painting that they use on their faces. Everything comes from the earth, one way or the other. All the hues, and some of them are placed in particular places based on certain symbols that they have. But this particular piece is a part of another painting, which is this one.
That's
right
the
here.
next one here.
That's the next one. These are called the Imo River Valley
Okay, both
tribe.
of those pieces.
Both of them. They just look different because this was taken at a different angle.
Right.
And I actually use this as a separate piece, even though it's cropped from here.
Okay, so this piece here with the head dress on and so
Right.
forth.
And this kind of gives you an idea of the different things they use from the trees. They don't have Maybelline over there, so they have to use what they can get from the earth, and they do a fantastic job of it. And as you can see, there's a great mixture of color here. They use the shell from different animals or crawling creatures, and
So that headwear is actually a shell.
that's actually a shell.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Wow.
Everything that they have is from the earth or from the water. And the reason I chose these Africans is because I'm doing a series of works called Into Africa. It's about people that are still living in Africa. So it's into Africa as opposed to out of Africa.
Okay, gotcha.
If it was out of Africa, maybe they would be here in the United States.
Right.
But they're still there, so I'm going into Africa, and I'm trying to capture some of the things that they do in their rituals and ceremonies.
We were talking earlier about this piece, as all your work, has a lot of texture in it. And when you are pursuing, getting that texture that you want, is there some kind of feeling that is generated within that is manifested in your mixing, creating the texture?
The feeling is there. Well, first, if you have the idea, that's great. But it's nothing like having an inspiration and a feeling when you're painting, because the canvas is empty. And the canvas is empty to me as well as it is to you. We can both get two different inspirations from it. I use music. If I'm painting African scenes, then I'll use African music.
Right.
And sometimes I'll play African stories, which are very heartening if you look at some of the conditions that the people live in Africa.
Right.
So when I paint something like this, ceremonial, it's a happy time.
Right.
It's a time for they're happy, but it's not always like this. It's not a rosy picture.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of an austere happiness. It's, that's almost like an oxymoron. But, the eyes say so much in this particular piece. Let's take a look at the next one here.
Yeah, I do put a lot of emphasis on the eyes, as you can see in this painting. This painting right here is a picture of a lady who you cannot see the whole picture because I haven't shown that to everyone yet.
Right.
But in this painting here, the lady was a large turbine that they make, they put on the ground, and they take the cloth and they make it. It's so large that it hovers over the back. And the purpose is to cover the child that they carry. They carry the child on their back, and so this protects them against the sun. But I made the eyes in here green because my father's eyes were green.
Right.
And occasionally when I'm painting people, I will do that as it's a memo to me.
Right.
That I give him homage.
Making it a more personal experience.
More personal experience. True.
And what is this next piece we have?
The next piece is a piece I call The Dancer. It is it's a painting of a sculpture that was done by Edgar Degas. Edgar Degas was a painter who most of his life painted ballerinas. He painted them as if though they were practicing, never noticing the painter involved.
Right.
Well, he tried his hand at a sculpture, and even though he was very well liked and revered in his community as an artist, when he showed that sculpture, he was almost an outcast He was almost blackballed by the art community because this was the mid 1800s. And when he showed her looking like an African American, the people of that day said, no, African American girls do not delve into this type of fine arts.
They're not delicate.
They're not delicate
Yeah.
enough, and they're not intelligent enough to be ballerinas. So in this painting here, I painted her and changed her color. Now in the original painting of this, I have a mask on her face. It just so happens that someone requested that I put some facial features on it. But in the original, there's a mask. And the idea is to say, if she had a mask on, and if she was this color, would you have been banned?
Wow, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. This is another great piece. And what is this piece here?
This is another person from the Emo River Valley. It's a child. And I put a lot of emphasis on the eyes. Right. Because I want this person's eyes to look right through the soul of the viewer. The first thing...
I think you managed to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The first thing that's captivating about this picture that I would hope the viewers would get would be the different colorations in the picture. And if you talked about texture, I tried to make it so that the texture around here looked like that it was real texture. And the eyes, which is the most captivating part of it.
Okay, when we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the texture and how the eyes are themselves a part of the whole texture experience.
Sure.
All right, so we'll talk further on the other side of the break.
Okay.
We'll see you on the other side of the break. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. Okay, Richard, tell us more about this piece. What is the name of it, by the way?
This is Emo River Valley 2.
Okay.
Because they're from the same tribe.
Right, right.
This piece right here, I wanted to make it look like it had texture. Now, sometimes if you don't put your brush down hard and just let it roll over the canvas or the paper, you can get some dimension in your paints. So that makes it look like it has texture. And in this painting, you can see that around the mouth, you can see variations, shades or tints of white, which gives the illusion of texture. Texture is an element of art, and when you put it in your work, you have to be very careful about how it's balanced out with the rest of the picture.
But you know that leads me to the next question here, and I want to thank you so very much for bringing your work to share with our viewers. I am of the impression that that human beings, by our very nature, there's a lot of symmetry, you know, left side and right side and so forth. But that doesn't always hold true when you're working with someone's face. You know, I mean, because sometimes the one eye might be smaller than the other, you know, and so there's some disparity. How do you manage to capture those kind of subtleties? I guess it's just capturing what you see.
Well, actually, you know, knowing the proportions of the face. Right. For example, when you look at one's face, you would think that the eyes are not halfway across the face, but if actually the eyes are halfway from the top of your head to the bottom of your chin.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to visualize that when you don't know what the proportions are. So once you know the proportions, it's easier for you to know where things are placed. However, perfection is not always the goal. We have a type of art called cubism, where perfection is not the goal.
Picasso,
right. I have a line of work that I've done in cubism. Sometimes when things are too perfect, the viewer looks for errors. We don't want the viewer to look for errors. We want the viewer to admire the work and to become a part of the work. So when things are too realistic, it becomes open for too much criticism. That's why a lot of times you'll see people that the impressionists who are not fixed on trying to make a tree look like a tree, but just to give you the impression of a tree or the impression of a flower. Therefore, you eliminate so much of the criticism of the work, and the viewers actually happen to enjoy the composition as opposed to trying to find out the little nitpicky things that are wrong with it. And Impressionism actually opens the artist up to be more free and to put the light where it's supposed to be and the shadows where it's supposed to be.
You know, to the artist, I think that there's likely something inherently beautiful about imperfection. Right?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And you'll find that a lot of African American artists get the question as to why they paint faces black. And some people say, well, you don't know how to do facial proportions or facial features. That is not the case. The reason why a lot of black artists paint faces black is because they don't want the fixation to be on the expression of the person. When you see a face, you're trying to think whether or not the person is beautiful, or you could say the person is ugly, that person doesn't look right, the nose is messed up, instead of concentrating on what the story of the painting is. So if the face is not there, but just the black color that's there, then you have the whole world is open to you for your interpretation on that instead of being critical of the facial features.
So a visual artist is a storyteller.
He's a storyteller, and we've always been storytellers. And one of my goals right now is to get more artists in the Taiwan area,
Right.
in this area, to tell the story of what's going on now. All down through the years, you have musicians, you have storytellers, you have poets who talk about the happenings, what is going on today. What are we going to look at years from there and look at this and say, this is what happened at that particular time period? Well, visual artists have the same responsibility. I mean, it's great to be able to paint a duck in the water. That's fantastic. But you can paint a duck in the water 20 years from now. If you miss what's going on and you don't tell the story in your art right now, you're missing the boat.
I'm curious. You know, we talked earlier about your working in oil. Do you always work in oil?
No, I don't always work in oil. If I'm doing a large mural for a church, which I do, or funeral homes or whatever, a lot of times I'll work in oil. But if you work in oil too much, you could become sick because of the smell from it.
Right.
So I will work on acrylic, and then I will work in an oil. But I might do one oil painting for every 3 acrylics.
Okay.
I've had that problem before of getting a fixation after painting a mural in my garage where there's no ventilation, and it'll wear on you.
And acrylic paint dries much quicker too.
Acrylics dry much quicker.
Okay.
They're easy to mix, but they don't give you the same blend as oil paints.
Right.
Because oil paints tend to cousin with each other. It becomes a family with the color when you're mixing it.
Right.
Acrylics can do that, but you have a much shorter time to do it.
Right. If you were to paint Richard, you know, everything that you do is a masterpiece. But is there something, something that you really want to work on? Is there something that's ruminating in your spirit, a piece that you like to do?
Well, there's one piece. I wanted to paint a vision of my mother as I saw her when she came off the bus, the work bus. And we were all at the end of the road because we had company at the house that she didn't know about. They were from Philadelphia. And we knew that she did not want them to see her like that. So we were outside the house and we were trying to wait until she got into close enough range to say, you have company, you have company.
Right,
and we just saw her dragging down the road with those dresses on and those pants and that hat tilted to the side. And I always wanted to capture that image.
And so
my mother passed at 94 years old 2 years ago, last year, actually.
Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that,
Thank
brother. So you're working up, preparing yourself to tackle that piece and really.
It's a special piece, and
Sure.
you have to be prepared for it. That's a piece that you probably want to be more in tune with than the viewers, because that's a personal piece.
Understood.
But I would imagine that there are a lot of people that can identify with it, especially people that from agricultural places
Sure.
like where I came from.
And we're going to be running out of time in just a moment here, but how would you define yourself as an artist? If you could use one word to define yourself as an artist, what word might that be?
Inspirator.
Okay.
Inspirator. Because I spend more time with kids. I volunteer twice a week teaching kids, and I find out that when you inspire kids, you inspire yourself.
Right.
And when you see the look on their faces and when they start jumping on your back and swinging on your arm, and then you're so glad to go home, but you're so glad that you did what you did. And I've seen so many successes of kids that I've taught who have pursued art as they come up. So inspiration is the biggest thing at my age.
Well, sir, you are a piece of art yourself. You are your own masterpiece, and one that we really, truly appreciate. I want to thank you so very much for coming on and joining us today on BioRhythms.
Well, thank you, Terrence. It's great being here.
Yeah. Fellow Sagittarius.
Fellows
And fellow artists. I just do a little different kind of art. Again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for joining us. And please stay tuned for the next edition of BioRhythms and tell all of your friends goodbye.
Goodbye.
Take care.